deeply moved to be here, deeply moved to be back together with folks who I know. Knowing Mike for 25 years, I guess that would be the record relationship. I'm also completely thrilled to be in the presence of folks who I never met, to my knowledge. I climbed Long's Peak 54 years ago. Gebser emphasizes participation. Gebser says, the very fact that we can discover a point of departure which might be adequate is beneficial even if it should prove difficult to make it effective at all times, for the assurance is effective only when it works of itself. I think that's really epitomized with these glorious spirals. Can we turn the sound down a little bit?
No. Is it reverb?
Yeah.
That one off.
Maybe that one.
It's off.
Okay. My first responsibility is as a poet. Sometimes I feel I don't ever really know what I'm doing. Given all my life experience and my best efforts at bringing together so many pieces of history, fragments of history, I am pulled in so many directions at once. Do I have the time? Should I be doing more? Running out of time. Time is closing in. What can I do for you and with you? How can I help? If I'm going to be truthful in this sacred dance of masculine with feminine, I must first of all and always endeavor to speak as plainly as possible with my feet on the ground and standing before you here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. By the way, there are significant pieces of history joining Santa Fe and Monterey. We can take that up if you want to at lunch. Are we here to dance? In this moment, I don't have to be anywhere else than where I am, which is where we are here and now, as the Spirit leads. Not a sermon, but a lot like one. An important day it is today. And of course, all days are important. You know what's happening. Something is happening. I spoke with my dear friend Craig day before yesterday. Craig is a hands-on authority on water resources management at all scales, but for municipalities, regions, as I wanted so very deeply to please Mother, who departed this life 24 years ago in the year 2000, just before the Gebser conference that year in Athens, Ohio. My mother died. That would be conference number 2 for me. I see you, and I am hearing you. This could be a point of departure. For me, relationships have always had at the core a connection with the divine. And this has always been true for me, wherever and whenever. Love is not an objectifiable, projectionable noun to be settled in or out of court. We can talk. Work is required of us, and how does this go? Where might we want to go with this loving as a happening, as in loving God, loving neighbor? Love is the integrating force, the integrating of the disintegrating, the wholeness of the paradox, the wholeness at all scales, in all dimensions, always and already in our uncertainties. The great and holy uncertainty at the nexus of our human predicament in our times, in the ages of the ages. And how does love play out in all our relationships, in all our humanity, in all the earth and more? The cosmic love joins all our lived contradictions, our terrors and joys in the sacred marriage, mysterium conjunctionis, hieros gamos. Love divine, all loves excelling. Whatever our language, whatever our traditions, we might find agreement in this: commonality, communion, communication, prophecy. We might focus on this, concentrate as the veils of verition are lifting in transparency, acausally, atemporally, aperspectively. Mike, in a paper a few years ago, you cited Teilhard de Chardin and how Teilhard developed the concept of the new sphere, the sphere of pure spiritual thought. We can speak of such a sphere of pure spiritual thought amongst ourselves as the integrating of the disintegrating, as has always been and is now in this planetary transmutation. And in the hours of our deaths, I feel there must be in truth some veritioning of our experiences of love in the hours of our deaths as a divine gift that we have accepted or rejected. Such decisions, even if extremely complex and heavily conflicted, hang in the balance when death calls. There is a final purposefulness in loving. In my orientation, we need to continue changing the nature of our dialogue in the reimagining of who we are in dialogue, as we are experiencing today. I am grateful that I know we are in this together. We are focusing together here on love's intensifications, as Teilhard expresses it. Let us behold in transparency this divine love, given the psychology that comprises inescapable complications in our personalities and our love bonds, and all males and females in our lives with whom we have love bonds or ever had. And here we are, being ourselves. We are living in a paradoxical and confusing era, as the CFP puts it. I have been contemplating this moment of speaking with you for many months. Our theme being the dance of the sacred feminine and masculine, and what first came to me actually as a point of departure is the daily, nightly challenge I experience living with the maternal materialities of integrating the disintegrating. From one worry to another, from one trauma to another, one by one, and the world trauma. Global upheavals, very large challenges. I expect we are all seriously concerned. sometimes seriously disturbed, seriously agonizing.
You need to unlock your iPhone first.
Kairos moment.
That's hilarious.
Apparently, that's the secret of the universe.
Thank you very much.
Our overlord is spoken.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I am overwhelmed. We are living at a hinge point of history. End times, beginnings in these endings, endings in these beginnings, times of unprecedented creativity and unprecedented powers of destruction and self-destruction. Not easily do I come to this awareing that disintegrating is not the opposite of integrating. Disintegrating is a complementarity, atemporal, amentional. Continuities, discontinuities are always intertwining. Integrating, disintegrating is transmutation. The ceaseless dying away and rebirthing anew. This is how I discern the sacred marriage of masculine and feminine. Disclosing a Holy Spirit in the depths, shattering surface appearances of a fantasy world of mental rationality, and the deficient modes of the mythic and the magical consciousness. Integrating, disintegrating is the process of the cosmos and of the psyche. It is love divine that brings forth the meaning of our lives from beginning to end. To be honest, I speak of my personal trials and tribulations with the never-ending deluge of the collective insanity of humankind, of the unthinkable, exponential horrors and atrocities of history and today's news feed. Early voting is happening. When I got my mail-in ballot this year, I was afraid to open it. Long-term health effects of exposure to debris and pollutants from the 9/11 terror attacks in New York City are far more serious than expected. A report on the surge of far-right extremism in the years leading up to the January 6th assault on the U.S. Capitol. Haiti residents fear fate is in God's hands after gangs commit the worst mass killing in decades. Ukraine's vast forests devastated in hellscape of war. Climate change, these are all quotes. Climate change has its tentacles everywhere. There's no place to hide. In North Carolina, my natal ground, some residents take up arms against rescue workers. Meteorologists who speak the words climate change get death threats. Murdering meteorologists won't stop hurricanes. I can't believe I just had to type that, wrote one forecaster. 10 times as many migrants died in New Mexico in each of the last 2 years compared to the 5 years ago, as smuggling gangs steer them exhausted, dehydrated, and malnourished into hot desert canyons and mountains west of El Paso. Autopsies show heat-related deaths. A forensic anthropologist says our reaction was sadness, horror, and surprise. So it is that we find ourselves living in a paradoxical and confusing era, verily. Humanity has thrown the global water cycle off balance for the first time in human history, fueling a growing water disaster that will wreak havoc on economies, food production, and lives, according to a landmark international report just released. Decades of destructive land use and water mismanagement have collided with human-caused climate crisis to put unprecedented stress on the global water cycle. The water cycle refers to the complex system by which water moves around the earth. And that is that, my sisters and brothers. How much chaos can we contain and still function? How do we, meaning you with whom I am speaking and I who am speaking with you here now, how do we contain the uncontainable forces of change in our lifetimes? Magnitudes of change without precedent in human experience. I heard a voice on the radio the other day offering a little break from the reality of the world today. Shall I go on? More than I can handle, I have to say, in very truth, on a sleepless night. How are you holding up? You all seem to be holding up. To be honest, I work with chronic anxiety. Gebser wrote a whole book on anxiety. I feel terrified, electrically shocked, electromagnetically shocked, dismayed, disheartened. What's my schedule for today? Nevertheless, I am a person of faith. Gebser speaks of primordial anxiety, yes, and he also speaks of primordial trust. This is also very deep within me. In paying attention to what is happening on planet Earth, how do we consider the nature and destiny of humankind? You've just spoken very well about this, Karen. We are lightning-charged beings. The universe is electromagnetic. Change is happening at the speed of our electrifying relationships globally. How is it possible to live with wearing the collective insanity and the suffering of multitudes? Must I be aware of every fight being fought today everywhere, all at once? Must I take a side in every fight? I cannot detach from the barbaric brutalities, the soul sickness, the world trauma. I take my stance where and when and how I can, as I expect you do. Right now, I want to breathe in peace, and I want to breathe out blessings to all. How do we locate ourselves in space-time, cultural matrices, mindsets, and states of being? You've just done a wonderful, wonderful tour for us, Karen. Let these sharing wearings form a circumambulation, circumambulating a center point, a point of departure, which is here now, and transcending here and now, atemporally. Let me create a center here and now. I was born in 1950. I reckon this as exactly 5 years after the hinge point of history that occurred here. Dawn, July 16, 1945, 5:29:45, Mountain War Time, Los Alamos, New Mexico. The dawn of the Trinity test of the ultimate powers of our human self-destructiveness in the place named Jornada del Muerto, Journey of the Dead Man, which is the name of the basin there at Los Alamos. inhabited for 11,000 years of human habitation in that basin. The war came to New Mexico, the beginning of the ending of the beginning, the opening of unchained reactions so fast and out of control, releasing an apocalyptic explosion of creation destruction, life and death. Might we hear to this day that boiling thunder as it rolls. The Institute of American Indian Arts, where we are gathered right now, is latitude 35 degrees north, longitude 106 degrees west. The Trinity site is 134.57 miles south of here. I'm north, south. 134.57 miles south, almost directly at longitude 106.4754. That is the prime meridian of the age that has ended and the age that is beginning, in the ages of the ages, so far as I am concerned. All my life I have felt thunder-stricken, psycho-radio activated, and I think we all are. My birthplace in Tennessee, not all that far from Oak Ridge, is almost directly east of where we sit right now. So, east. Almost exactly east. North-south, here to Los Alamos, east-west to eastern Tennessee, the southern Appalachian Mountains, the Oak Ridge area, the sacred land of the Cherokee. A land of human habitation also tracing back at least 11,000 years, probably more. Before Stonehenge, before the pyramids. Let me extend the latitude to Monterey, which also, by coincidence, is 36 degrees north of the equator. How does this happen? Monterey is also in the Central California coast, a location of human habitation at least 11, 12, 13 millennia. And the evidences are all around you there if you have eyes to see them. And we can face down right now to the center of the earth, a star. The earth is a star, Gebser says. An EPO at the end. The earth is a star. Interesting. Think about it. Wonders and mysteries beneath our feet, as you have elucidated. And we can look up, yes, as you say, to primordial wavelengths spinning 13.772 billion years, plus or minus 59 million years. I can live with it. And we have right here, as you have already brought us to, and that is a seventh coordinate. The Cherokee lived with 7 directions. Rising sun, setting sun, north, south, and up, down. That's 6, and right here. What you said. So let's say I'm doing part 2. So how can we find our lives to be entwined? How can we not find our lives to be entwined? We humans, led by our finest intellects, have reckoned that our powers of creative destruction are commensurable with the cosmic forces. How do we experience ourselves among these familiar and unfamiliar trajectories, our life world saturated with vortexes of integrating, disintegrating forces at every scale and in all dimensions? How do we embrace the discontinuities that allow us the possibilities of our existences and of our descendants? I have lived my life surrounded by women. My mother's body was the first surround, and all of us have arrived through the body of a woman. No exceptions. The future of humanity is arriving through the bodies of women. I hope that never changes. This is the cosmic delivery. I was born into a family with 3 older sisters. There were powerful women in my neighborhood, including Margaret, who determined that we would be married in the 2nd grade. There were powerful women in our church family. I was blessed with many gifted and dedicated teachers who were women, and I can name them all from 1st grade, actually, I can. Some of these teachers in my background became lifelong friends. How does it all connect? As we live our lives as feminine and masculine, attracted to and repelled from each other, these matters are not to be sorted out by mental, rational means. I would suggest rhapsodic moods, psalms, flute playing, hymns and choruses, and dance. Mother was for me a caress, a loving touch, warmth, flesh, floral fragrances. I did not wear our interlinked microbiomes, but they were there, alive and well. I did not intuit from birth the spirits of the ancestors, or maybe I did. Maybe we all do. As we are brought forth by day by day, night by night, in the ages of the ages. I wear the women who have presentiated most powerfully in my life, who have embodied the feminine, Shakti, cosmic sex, Tantra, limitless wonder, Kali, the most intimate intimacies of living and sharing and dying, dancing in the flames. We are flooded with the imagos of the living and the dead in our globally interlocking life stories. We are at a turning point, and everyone knows that. I watch and listen for my 8-year-old granddaughter's sense of adventure. What's next? Let's go. I should give her a slinky. So see if they're available for purchase. What's the time?
You got 15 minutes.
Okay. I think we're okay. My dear friend Marianne Woodman, a great psychologist, we are talking about a masculine principle and a feminine principle. If you think of matter as an aspect of the feminine principle, another dimension is revealed. Matter as an aspect of the feminine principle. All matter is feminine, Marianne says. I agree. Feminine consciousness rises out of the mother, and you have to be grounded in that, because without it, you'd just be blown away by spirit. Feminine consciousness, as I see it, means going into that grounding and recognizing there where you are as a soul. It has to do with love, receiving. I embrace the paradoxes. I pray to be forgiven my trespasses, and I let go. There will always be more than can be mentally, rationally known. Always. Nathan Schwartz-Salant, a wonderful psychologist, an acquaintance, wonderful man. Nathan writes this in a most deeply important book, The Order-Disorder Paradox. There is no order without disorder. These are inseparable. Nathan writes, when I came upon Jean Gebser's magisterial, the ever-present origin, I recognized that I had entered the level of consciousness he calls aperspectival, an awareness beyond time and based on oneness, not on separate parts or connected to rationality. Through the aperspectival form of consciousness, life is transparent. And the verity of a situation is a just so story. Just so. Here we are. We are just so. becoming aware of psychic life through a world of oneness, a unitary background out of which events emerge in space-time. This unitary domain, which Jung refers to as the unus mundus, carries information usually lost to rational consciousness, but perceptible through an aperspectival awareness. And remember, aperspectival means we're open to all perspectives, all perspectives. Continuing with Nathan, the rational ego will usually attempt to avoid anxiety through finding its causes, changing it through medication, and so forth. But other forms of consciousness, notably the mythical and aperspectival, will seek deeper meanings within this anxiety. Not going beyond it, but through it. Allowing the mystery of life and of the self to unfold. Still Nathan, our collective attitude, our zeitgeist, is dominated by the belief that disorder is an enemy. For it impedes our continual progress and our ability to construct new solutions. Mental confusion, insecurities about solving our problems in relationship, creativity in workplace, and the frightening sense of feeling weakened are all seen as worthless states, requiring a remedy through the will, if not through medication. But if we respect these troublesome states, realizing that they might be the consequence of a deeper order forming within us, we experience the disorder of that reaction. We integrate the disorder as we may be tossed about by a deeper story of energy transformations. The main characteristic of a positive disintegration is that the person is able to maintain an attitude toward their distress that relates to feelings about the inner task they face, rather than with some idea of how things should be. Thank you, Nathan. Last year in San Francisco, I formed, and so many of us did, an ongoing, lovely relationship with my friend I most respectfully quote, Professor Ananta Giri of the University of Madras.
Yeah.
And Ananta speaks, and he spoke to our Monterey Jung group, what is yet to be realized, an ecology of trust and fearlessness, planetary conversations, planetary realization. Out of moral and spiritual poverty, a calling of grace. Words speaking to us with multiple openness. Asking geopolitical questions with openness of soul. Namaste, Ananta. With openness of soul, let us hear Aurobindo. Beloved Aurobindo. You must be conscious in your mind and soul and heart and life and the very cells of your body, aware of the mother and her powers and their working. Mahakali, force and strength are her peculiar power. There is in her an overwhelming intensity, a mighty passion of force to achieve a divine violence, rushing to shatter every limit and obstacle. The impulses are swift and straight and frank. The movements are unreserved and absolute. The aspiration that mounts in flame are the motion of Mahakali. Mahashakti, bewildered by the swift alteration of her many different personalities. Her making of rhythms and her breaking of rhythms, her accelerations of speed and her retardations, her varied ways of dealing with the problem. of one and another, her taking up and dropping, now this line and now that one, and her fathering of them together. The human mind will not recognize the way of the supreme power. If you follow your mind, it will not recognize the mother, even when she is manifest before you. Follow your soul. Trust. Trust the divine power. And she will free the godlike elements in you. And shape all into an expression of divine nature. Thank you, Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo. Beloved Ramakrishna, the Divine Mother revealed to me in the Kali temple that it was she who had become everything. She showed me that everything was full of consciousness. The image was consciousness. The water was consciousness. The altar was consciousness. The water vessels were consciousness. The door sill was consciousness. The marble floor was consciousness. All was consciousness. Ramakrishna. A description by Lawrence Gross, professor at the University of Redlands. I came across this because I read too much. I can't even keep track of everything. I read that I'm drawn, like you are, to attractors, and I was drawn to this by Lawrence Gross, a member of the Anishinaabeg. Here is Lawrence Gross. Quote, I'll tell you when I'm quitting quoting. American Indians have seen the end of their respective worlds. Using vocabulary from the study of religion, this should be correctly termed an apocalypse. American Indians in general have seen the end of their worlds. In effect, the old world of their ancestors has come to an end. The American Indians are living in a post-apocalyptic environment. This is not to say that the worldviews that previously informed the cultures have also become defunct. It simply means that American Indians are in the process of building new worlds. Worlds that are true to their past history, but cognizant of present realities. Worlds can collapse. The supporting pillars of a given world can give way for whatever reason, and society come tumbling down. People undergoing such an experience are left to deal with the fallout and to somehow adjust to new realities, whether by giving up their world for dead or by trying to pick up the pieces as best they can. This is what I would term an apocalypse. And this is the reality that Indian societies must deal with today. Most importantly, Indians survived the apocalypse. Close quote. Making it through. Jeff Keel, dear friend, many of you know Jeff. In his book, Jeff says, working through our grief requires us to remember the concealed, to make conscious our feelings of loss. We must move into our feelings of suffering for nature. It is through consciously facing our suffering not forgetting that we bring meaning to life. Glenn Aparicio Perry speaks of original love. I ponder unconditional love and what that might be and what that might require in the complete reality of our living and our dyings. From the Quran, every soul will taste death. Mike, in one of Mike's paper, you said this, Mike. Teilhard went on to conceive a maximum level of complexity and consciousness toward which he believed the universe was evolving, and which he identified with Christ as the Logos, or Word of God. He understood creation to be, quote, a teleological process towards union with the Godhead, close quote. Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me. But where? Follow where? Where is the Christ? If not in our loving God and loving one another as ourselves, as Spirit leads. Gebser sings of the Akronon, with a capital A, in the invisible origin, a mystical work. The marriage of heaven and earth. Blake sings of the marriage of heaven and hell. Gebser speaks of the invisible origin with as primordial trust as the holy at once. Here's Gebser. I'm almost done. This is Gebser. In the end, we are concerned with the breaking of the at once into our consciousness. Where this overcoming is successful, the world becomes transparent down to everyday life and as well to ourselves. This becoming transparent of what formerly confronted each other dualistically as subject and object is a further indication for the formation of the integral consciousness. The overcoming of time finally leads into freedom of time and to a conscious participation in the at once. But the condition for this is the breaking of the at once having become conscious to us. This at once is not only being part of the universal consciousness and origin, but appearing identical with them. This at once is not only being part of the universal consciousness and the origin, but appearing identical with them. We can find, that's the end of Gebser. We can find resilience as a form of ancestral knowing, as Jung described it as an absolute knowing, ancestral knowing. A greater order enfolds and unfolds in the integrating, disintegrating of ghosts and demons. Our life paths are not only pushed from behind, we are also pulled onward to completion, the Tao. Gebser says this, and so does Jung. What shall we do? Jung says, do the next right thing. There is joy in accepting that I can't resolve the most passionate tensions of my heart on my own, by my own efforts alone. The masculine alone is deficient, and in extremist forms, insane. But in our coming together, as best we can, within and between us, we join, as the CFP puts it, a co-creative experiment. that can serve as an incubator for birthing effective practices of masculine-feminine collaboration in all spheres of life. How do our hearts dwell in synchronicities with the living and the dying and the dead, and with those yet to be brought forth, to be mothered, yet to be mothered, into these spheres of life. I offer this common prayer. Holy Mother, have mercy and grant us grace in our times of need. Receive us in the hours of our deaths. Here we are, Holy One. Send us.
Thank you.